Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines we're tracking for you this evening. TCS kicks off earnings season on a positive note. Second quarter revenue and margin beat estimates. Profit after tax crosses 10,000 crore rupees for the first time. But attrition rises to 21.5%. Stock markets decline despite a late recovery. All sectoral indices end in the red, barring the Nifty IT index. The rupee sees some volatile swings before ending the day flat. Russian missiles strike Ukraine's capital city Kiev for the first time in 7 months. Other cities in Ukraine also under attack. This after an explosion brought down the only bridge connecting occupied Crimea with the Russian mainland. Putin warns of a harsh response if attacks against Russia continue. Crude oil prices ease after hitting the highest level in a month, but Brent crude remains closer to the $100 mark. Stock markets recoup losses around the world in volatile trade. JP Associates moves to cut its debt burden. The board approves the sale of cement assets, including a grinding unit in Madhya Pradesh worth around 5,000 crore rupees. The number of children who have died allegedly due to contaminated cough syrup poisoning made by India's maiden Pharma rises to 69. The WHO says it did not certify Maiden Pharma's plant as claimed on the company website. Pharma exporters' body suspends the company. The Delhi High Court orders global personal care major L'Oreal to pay 186 crore rupees for failure to pass on the GST rate cut to consumers, upholds the findings of the National Anti-Profiteering Authority. Turning out to be a good festive season for automakers. Dealers say sales during Navratri higher by 57% versus 2021 and 16% higher than the pre-COVID growth. Former Union Defence Minister and three-time UP Chief Minister Mulayam Singh Yadav dies at the age of 82 after a prolonged illness. The UP government announces a 3-day state mourning. Former Chairman of the US Federal Reserve Ben Bernanke, along with American economists Douglas Diamond and Philip Dybvig, win the 2022 Nobel Prize for Economics. The trio were honoured for their research on banks and financial crises. After the latest iPhone, Apple will make AirPods in India, says the Union IT Ministry. The first batch of iPhone 14 will be manufactured by December this year from the Foxconn facility on the outskirts of Chennai. Rajasthan starts vaccinating cattle for lumpy skin disease, but there's still no clarity on the efficacy of the shots. We bring you a ground report from Jodhpur, one of the biggest hubs for cattle in India. Well, let's start with the market action. Weakness across Asia and Europe rubbed off on the Lal Street, where shares were largely under pressure, but we did see a recovery after a sharp fall in opening trade. At the end, the Sensex and the Nifty lost nearly 0.5%. All sectoral indices were closing in the red today, barring the Nifty IT index. In fact, staying with markets, net inflows into equity mutual funds have more than doubled in September. That's compared to August, with more than 14,000 crore rupees in inflows. The net equity inflows was the highest in the last 3 months. SIP inflows also remain steady at nearly 13,000 crore rupees. In the currency market, the rupee remains under pressure, with the dollar strengthening on the back of higher crude oil prices. The Indian currency opened at its historic low of 82.62 against the dollar. It did recover some of those losses and finally closed flat at 82.32 against the dollar. There was, of course, signs of RBI intervention pulling the rupee off its intraday low. Earnings season is upon us, and TCS has kicked things off on a positive note. The IT majors reported an all-round beat, both in terms of profit, revenue and margin. Quarterly profits for TCS crossing 10,000 crore rupees for the very first time. Margins have expanded to 24%. But attrition continues to rise and has hit 21.5% in the second quarter. TCS has also announced a dividend of 8 rupees a share. Rima standing by with the TCS Q2 report card. Rima.
Thanks so much for that. TCS Q2 surpassing expectations in both revenues, margin, constant currency revenue growth at 4%, EBIT margins at 24%, expanding by 90 basis points, again higher than street expectations. The company's won orders worth $8.1 billion in the quarter gone by, similar to what they had in the last quarter. So that's a positive, because the street was worried that with the challenging macros that we're currently in, the deal wins could show an impact. That's not been the case this time. In fact, the two troubled verticals, Europe as well as UK, have shown close to about a 15% year-on-year revenue growth. The only worrying point has been the hiring numbers. Hiring for TCS is sub 10,000. This is a big drop-off compared to the hiring numbers that they had in the prior quarters. Why is that? That's point number one. And secondly, attrition has gone up even further, 21.5%, but the management is fairly confident that attrition has peaked out. In a nutshell, TCS has delivered and beaten street expectations on both revenues as well as margins. So at least for now, this should allay street concerns.
There is an increasing sense of caution that is in the discussions that we sense. But we had told you last time that it is not yet materialized into our order pipeline, and that continues to be the case now also. So there is that increasing sense of caution. There is that increasing sense that we need to be wary of uncertainties. However, I believe there is space if we are staying close to find opportunities for growth. But will we be totally insulated? Very difficult to say.
Well, that is TCS with its second quarter numbers and all-round beat coming in. Brokerage firm Nomura has downgraded India's FY24 GDP forecast to 5.2%. However, its growth expectation for FY23 is in line with RBI's revised forecast of 7%. Nomura says India's optimism for FY24 may be, and I quote, misplaced, and the spillover effects from the global slowdown are being underestimated. Shares of Tata Motors under pressure today after its subsidiary Jaguar and Land Rover reported a 5% drop in sales for Q2. The drop is being largely attributed to the semiconductor shortage as well as the macroeconomic situation and COVID lockdowns across China. But back home, good news for Motown. Auto dealers say that they are witnessing strong sales amidst the festive season. According to the Federation of Auto Dealers Association of FADA, sales for the Navratri period rose by 57% versus 2021 and up by 16% versus 2019. Almost all categories have shown strong growth, including two-wheelers. The big global story, Russian missiles struck several Ukrainian cities, including the capital Kyiv, days after an explosion on the Kerch Bridge, which links mainland Russia to the annexed Crimean Peninsula. Dozens of missiles were launched reportedly from the Black Sea that hit Kyiv, which came under attack for the first time since June. The Russian retaliation comes after President Vladimir Putin called the attack on the Kerch Bridge an act of terror. Speaking just a short while back, Putin warned of a harsh response if Russia comes under attack. Ukrainian President Zelensky has accused Russia of trying to wipe his country off the face of the earth. He will hold talks with G7 leaders tomorrow. Cal Perry gets us more.
So this was a massive volley of rocket fire striking across the country. At least 83 rockets and or drones reported by Ukrainian defense officials. Some 41 of them shot out of the air. So about a 50% rate there of shooting out those rockets and drones. The other half, of course, impacting their targets. Some of those targets, residential targets. You can see there on the left side of your screen, or excuse me, on the right side of your screen. That is aftermath from the Capitol here this morning. At least 8 people dead in the Capitol, another 24 wounded. We're told that there are still some people stuck under rubble. Rescue services obviously trying to make their way to those scenes now. To the eastern part of the country, the city of Kharkiv taking a number of strikes as well. The city of Rivne in the center of the country, at least 5 dead there. That death toll expected to rise. And all the way to the west of the country, the city of Lviv, normally a calm city, some hundreds of miles away from the fighting. Strikes taking place there, hitting infrastructure targets. The power in that city at this hour, we understand, is out. Right now, where I am in the capital, the streets are deserted. People are huddled in the subway. The mayor says he expects more attacks to take place. As you said, these are the first strikes in and around the capital since June. That was the last time we had these strikes. This follows that strike on the bridge in Crimea. People expected there to be some kind of reaction, but this is a very, very large response indeed.
Cal reporting there from Kyiv. Now, the number of children who have died on account of taking in contaminated cough syrup made by India's maiden Pharma has risen to 69. A report by The Wire claims the World Health Organization did not certify maiden Pharma's plant as claimed on the company's website. The pharma exporters body has suspended the company. Our colleague Abhimanyu Sharma reports from maiden Pharma's offices in Delhi, which wear a deserted look.
This is the Delhi office of the pharma company Maiden Pharmaceuticals, which has come under scanner after 66 children died in Gambia after consuming cough syrups which were produced by the company. While the company has expressed shock over the incident, it has claimed that it has been working since the past 3 decades as per the protocols laid down by the Central and Haryana state regulator and is cooperating with all the relevant authorities. The pharma exporters body, Pharmexil, has also suspended Maiden Pharmaceuticals, which has been warned of illegal practices by the state governments of Gujarat and Kerala in the past, as its medicines had failed to meet the standard quality tests. When we visited Maiden Pharmaceuticals' office in Delhi, the company officials said that no one from the senior management was present, and they pointed to the notices which were pasted outside their office. One was a medical product alert against substandard pediatric medicines by the WHO, while the second was an order by the Medicines Control Agency in Gambia to suspend and recall all products of Maiden Pharmaceuticals, while the company's website had claimed that one of its plants was certified by the World Health Organization. WHO had told the wire that it had not certified or inspected any of the plants of Maiden Pharmaceuticals.
Well, that is the important clarification that has come in from the WHO. As we've been reporting, Maiden Pharma has a controversial track record. Reports quoting the World Health Organization indicate that the UN agency had never certified Maiden Pharma's plant. Maiden Pharma was in fact one of the 46 Indian companies blacklisted by Vietnam in 2013. Ekta Batra joins us now with more on what has been a series of repeat incidents of substandard drugs.
As per a report by The Wire, the World Health Organization has said it never certified Maiden Pharma's plants. Also, the report indicates that the contaminants of the drug by Maiden Pharma was so poisonous as per the WHO that it resulted in an 85% fatality rate. And most of the children who were impacted by the 4 cough and cold syrups produced by Maiden Pharma and exported to Gambia were below 2 years of age. This issue continues to raise concerns and questions. For example, while the company did not have a license to sell these 4 cough and cold drugs in India, were there enough red flags to have averted this incident? For example, the company, which started operations as per its website in 1990, was one of the 46 Indian companies blacklisted by Vietnam in 2013. The company had 6 of its drugs, such as diabetes medicine metformin, vitamin D and calcium tablets, and blood thinner aspirin, that have been reported as substandard since 2015 by drug regulators from Kerala and Gujarat. Many of these cases of substandard drugs were reported in the past few months. So how did their lax manufacturing go unnoticed by authorities? Legal experts point to a couple of issues. One is of too many regulators. While any new drug in the country gets approved by the central authority, the Drug Controller General of India or the DCGI, the older drugs, which are anything more than 4 years, are governed by state regulators. Also, a regulator of one state cannot inspect the facility of a pharma company in another state unless the regulator of that state is on board. And many states have different licensing procedures and approval processes. Hence, there is a lack of central coordination or authority which can take a collective call on substandard production, with companies then getting away with lax processes. Experts point out that for India, there is an urgent need to have a common regulatory authority, possibly on the same lines as the US drug regulator. One needs to at least centralize the licensing process for manufacturing facilities and have transparent processes as well. And while creating a centralized authority might come with its own challenges, lastly, the industry watchers, experts say it is time to bridge the gap when it comes to India's pharma industry. While on one hand, we are exporting over $20 billion of pharma drugs globally, with the largest geography of US FDA-compliant plants outside of the US, on the other hand, we have seen 5 cases of DEG poisoning alone, with the latest case in India just 2 years ago in 2020.
Ekta, many thanks for joining us. Several regulatory lapses that need to be plugged. The quick check of some of the other headlines tonight. JP Associate has moved to cut its debt burden. The board has approved the sale of its cement assets, including a grinding unit in Madhya Pradesh worth around 5,000 crore rupees. The Delhi High Court has ordered global personal care major L'Oreal to pay 186 crore rupees for failure to pass on the GST rate cuts to consumers, upholding the findings of the National Anti-Profiteering Authority. Now, here's an important story. The union government is deliberating new rules to curb cases of cheque bouncing. Sources say a cheque bounce could now be treated on par with a loan default. Sapna Das is here with more. Sapna, take us through what the government is considering.
Well, definitely these are suggestions that have come in from various quarters, some including also banking entities, and these are ongoing deliberations. But having said that, a couple of important highlights. Number one, of course, the suggestion for treating a cheque bounce as a loan default. this could be very significant because a loan default is on a very different scale in comparison to a check bounce right now. There are not too many penal provisions for a check bounce case as of now. And if you look at the Negotiable Instruments Act, Section 135, I think that leaves ample space for some further action, and that's what probably the government is hinting towards as of now. That's one. Second, also in terms of getting the power to debit the other accounts of the issuer who has given the check that has bounced. That could again be very important. And last but not the least, also options like either a complete ban or some kind of restrictions or restraint on those account holders who issue such checks which bounce, basically, barring them from opening new accounts. That, of course, goes against the current spirit of expansion of the banking services all over the country. But this may be an important punitive measure if the instances of check bounces don't come down in the courts. That's what the government is trying to address. They'll also have to examine the legal feasibility of all these options which are under discussion right now. Maybe some amendments to the Negotiable Instruments Act may have to be proposed. So that's something we'll have to wait and watch and see. Once the legal feasibility has been examined, I think this may go forward. So this is what we have as of now, but all eyes on this story. It's a developing story.
It is a developing story. Sapna, many thanks for joining us. Now, the former chairman of the US Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, along with American economists Douglas Diamond and Philip Dybvig, have won the Nobel Prize for Economics. The trio were honored for their research on banks and financial crises. Steve Leesman is here with more on why Bernanke and the two others won the coveted prize over other nominees. Steve.
I think the debate is going to be about the extent to which what he did in 2008 warrants the prize. But I think it's important to point out that's not what he got the prize for. Bernanke was like 28 and then 30 years old when he wrote the papers that I think they are talking about in this, which is he changed our understanding of the Great Depression, right? Schwartz and Friedman come along and they say this is because the Fed screwed up on monetary policy. Bernanke comes later and says, yeah, you guys are right, but there was this other element to it. And this other element is that the banking system shut down. And so if you're going to have a recession and you want to get out of it quickly, yeah, you got to get monetary policy right, but you also have to watch the financial channels that are out there. And that's what led to what happened, I think, in 08, not I think, for sure, that Bernanke was faced with what he had studied when he was, in his 20s and early 30s, and said, you know what, this is the paper that I wrote, and this is what we need to do, which is we to make sure that we don't have a banking panic.
Steve Leesman, many thanks for joining us. We will head into a break, but up next, Rajasthan starts vaccinating cattle for the lumpy skin disease, but there's still no clarity on the efficacy of the shots. A special report from Jodhpur when we return.
We all have something deep within us. Something that's worth gold. So go ahead, show your confidence. Show your spirit. Show your grit. Show your strength. Show the world who you really are. And celebrate your essence with gold. You are precious. You are brilliance. You are bold. You are gold.
Yes, they're electric. Among other wonderful things, the fully electric Audi e-tron models.
आग को फैलने से रोकना मुश्किल है, पर नामुमकिन नहीं। अब फायरवॉल टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ सेंचुरी प्लाइड क्लब प्राइम आग से बचाए।
Volkswagen Tiguan, 1 year of hustle. Volkswagen.
आग को फैलने से रोकना मुश्किल है, पर नामुमकिन नहीं। अब फायरवॉल टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ सेंचुरी प्लाइड क्लब प्राइम आग से बचाए।
Yes, they're electric. Among other wonderful things, the fully electric Audi e-tron models.
आग को फैलने से रोकना मुश्किल है, पर नामुमकिन नहीं। अब फायरवॉल टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ सेंचुरी प्लाइड क्लब प्राइम आग से बचाए।
Former Defence Minister and three-time UP Chief Minister Mulayam Singh Yadav died at the age of 82. The Samajwadi Party patriarch has been suffering from health-related ailments for the last couple of years. He was admitted at a Delhi hospital for over a fortnight. Yadav, whose political career spanned over 5 decades, entered mainstream politics in 1967 when he became an MLA at the age of 28. In his first term as a Member of Parliament in the mid-90s, Mulayam Singh Yadav served as the nation's Defence Minister. Leaders across political parties condoled the death of the veteran leader. The UP government has announced a 3-day state mourning. The divide between the Supreme Court collegium is out in the open. For the first time, the collegium resolution has named 2 judges for failing to agree with the proposals tabled by the Chief Justice of India, UU Lovett, on appointing judges to higher courts. Ashmit joins us now to explain what this means. Ashmit, take us through the collegium resolution that has caused this stir.
Well, a couple of aspects to bear in mind. Number one, the Supreme Court collegium consists of the top 5 judges, the top 5 senior-most judges of the Supreme Court, including the Chief Justice of India. The second aspect to keep in mind is that normally the only aspect of the collegium that is disclosed is the final resolution, which discloses the judges that have finally been appointed to the top court, and that's all. What is interesting and what is unprecedented perhaps, and this is for the first time that we're seeing that the collegium not only discloses the decision-making process within the collegium, but importantly also pins the blame on specific judges of the collegium which have in fact disagreed with the decisions proposed by the Chief Justice himself. Now here's what transpired. On September 26th, there was a meeting called of the collegium, which in fact to consider 11 names for elevation to the top court. There are vacancies in the top court that need to be filled. In that meeting, there was consensus built only on one specific name. There were 10 names that continued to remain, and the 10 names were due to be considered on the second meeting scheduled on September 30th, and this is where the controversy lies. On that particular day, Justice Chandrachud, who was busy with judicial commitments, failed to appear in this collegium meeting, and that is where there was a proposal made by the Chief Justice, and that proposal was shared with the members of the collegium via a letter due to the unavailability of Justice Chandrachud. Now, what's interesting is that the collegium resolution very clearly identifies that Justice Chandrachud and Justice Nazir in writing disagreed with this process. This method of circulating a letter for deciding upon a name was in fact objected to. In fact, October 2nd is when the Chief Justice wrote to these specific judges to ask if they had any particular concerns regarding the candidates in question and not regarding the process, which did not elicit any response. Now, to that end, this collegium resolution ends by saying that there was no headway made on account of those 10 names and that the meeting was discharged without any formal decision. So cracks emerging within the collegium. The reason that's significant is that the Chief Justice of India is in receipt of a letter from the Law Ministry asking him to nominate his successor, which normally, as convention dictates, should be the second senior-most judge, which in this case happens to be Justice Chandrachud, the very man disagreeing with the Chief Justice of India.
Ashmit, appreciate you joining us. India's agri-dependent community, especially the one dependent on cattle, is facing a quiet crisis. Even as the farming community recovers from the hits dealt by the COVID-19 pandemic, cattle farmers are battling an outbreak of a different kind. Lumpy skin disease. The viral disease has already killed 1 lakh cows. CNBC-TV18 Santiagora travelled to Rajasthan and found that while the government has started a vaccination drive to contain the spread of the disease, there is no clarity on the efficacy. A word of caution, some of the images that follow could be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
The city of Jodhpur and its surrounding areas are plunged in a somber mood. This hub of cattle farmers has seen a massive loss of life among its cows in the past few months and accounts for a large portion of the state's over 60,000 cow deaths due to lumpy skin disease. 60-year-old Punaram is one of the affected farmers. All of his 10 cows have been infected by the viral disease and one of them is dead. He, like many of the farmers in the area, says that while the state government claims to have stepped up efforts to vaccinate cattle and try to stop the spread of the disease, these steps have not been timely or enough or very effective.
जो गायें मर रही हैं उनको पहले तो दफनाने का कार्य हमने हमारे घर के पैसों से किया, बाद में पंचायत वालों ने क्या है कि हर आदमी के पास में तो पैसा था नहीं, इसलिए गायें बाहर पड़ी रहती थी, तो बाद में वो ज़्यादा बदबू देने लग गई, तब पंचायत वालों ने आके उन गायों को अंदर डाला है। ठीक है ना सर। तो बहुत बीमारी थी, गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से हमारे को कोई मदद नहीं मिली। हमने जो गायों का इलाज किया घर के पैसे से किया, कोई किसी प्रकार की मदद, कोई किसी प्रकार का सहारा नहीं था।
At Arshi Devi's farm 500 meters away, the mood is gloomy. She has already lost 2 cows to the disease and says the rest of her small herd is in danger. It's a story common across farms and cattle shelters in the region.
6 गायों ही जगह में 4 बच्ची है, 2 मर्गी, 3 बच्चा है। जगह में गाय है जो पूरी बराबर ठीक नहीं है। कोई सरकार में सुविधा है तो लागू कर दो।
इतनी गायें थी, कुल मिला के 150 गायें थी, उसमें आधी गायें मर गई। हमारी बीमारी की बहुत समस्या थी, पानी पीती नहीं थी, चारा डालते थे चारा खाती नहीं थी, बस पड़ी रहती थी और बहुत तकलीफ से मरी गायें।
Of the 15 states where lumpy skin disease has been reported among cows, Rajasthan is the worst hit and accounts for nearly 60 to 70% of the country's cattle deaths that are being attributed to the disease. While both state governments and the centre say the vaccination drives they have started should help, scientists say a lot more research into the disease is needed.
We assembled the genome of this virus and we tried to compare it with what the genomes that are out there already available in the public domain. This year, the virus is distinctly different. The genomic studies throw no light on how the current vaccine is going to perform.
The National Institute of Virology in Pune and the Indian Council of Medical Research have also started conducting research on the virus. Studies so far suggest that as of now, this disease is not transmitted to humans through milk or meat, but ground realities say that in states like Rajasthan and Punjab, lumpy skin disease has hit milk collection and the effects have a national repercussion.
If a cattle gets impacted by this disease, the yield for the cow reduces anywhere by about 25 to 40% for the indigenous variety and about 50% for the exotic varieties. In states like Punjab, we're given to understand from farmers that the overall yield has reduced by about 15 to 20%.
The problem of low milk yields is compounded by an increasing apprehension among milk consumers and farmers are distressed.
गवर्नमेंट का आंकड़ा बिल्कुल ये झूठा आंकड़ा है, गायों ज़्यादा मरी है।
एक भी टीका नहीं दिया है, कोई यहाँ दवाई, कोई किसी प्रकार का इलाज यहाँ पहुँचा ही नहीं हमारे वहाँ।
दूध आधा कम हो गया और इसमें राज्य सरकार की और केंद्र की कोई यहाँ सहायता नहीं है।
While there is still no concrete plan to save the cows, some farmers fear that a second wave has begun and the virus could spread to other species of cattle. Experts say very little research has been done about lumpy skin disease. The first case in the country was reported in Gujarat in April this year. It's been over 6 months, yet little is known about the disease. Also, there's no guarantee that the current vaccination drive will actually help and no evidence to suggest that the disease will not spread from cows to other animal species. In Tivri, Rajasthan, with camera person Milind Wagmare, this is Santya for CNBC-TV18.
Well, the latest challenge facing the agri-economy. Before we wrap this edition of India Business Hour, today is World Mental Health Day and we want to address the importance of mental well-being. The National Mental Health Survey conducted in 2019 estimated that over 56 million Indians suffered from some form of depression and 38 million Indians suffered from anxiety disorder. Despite the high prevalence of mental disorders in India, the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences has reported that over 80% of Indians do not have access to mental care services. So what can companies do to make workplaces less toxic and more mental health friendly? We speak with industry leaders and experts on Mind Matters, an invitation to well-being, a campaign that CNBC-TV18 launched in March 2022 with the aim to highlight the importance of mental health, create awareness and eliminate stigma. Watch our special edition of Mind Matters at 9:30 p.m. right here on CNBC-TV18. And that's it then on this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned. The news continues on CNBC-TV18.